Vibrate Higher Daily, Chapter 1, page 13. Dark Night of the Soul. By the time I was in my early 20s, the damage, although I was unaware of it at the time, began to reveal itself. It was showing up in my choices. For instance, it showed up in the relationship I was in, which turned into a domestic violence nightmare of 2 years until I escaped in the middle of the night. I had internalized the wrong messages, that pain and abuse were norms. I already had a low sense of self-worth, which led me to accept such an abusive relationship in the first place. But the effects of that abuse diminished whatever little amount of self-worth I had left. At the time, I was emptied out, or so I thought, and I couldn't untangle myself from the effects. After escaping that abusive relationship, I found myself disoriented and hopeless, to the point of trying to end my life. I couldn't figure out how to make the pain and its negative patterns stop. But as fate would have it, my past, the pain, and the suicide attempt would not win or have the final say. After I attempted suicide, I was unconscious for 3 days, and after regaining consciousness, my first reaction while in this dazed state was anger, because I was still alive and, needless to say, unsuccessful in escaping the pain of my life. But then moments later, this other feeling and awareness rose within, and my focus shifted into a comforting realization that my life had just been saved from ending in the tragic way it nearly did. The deep-rooted pain and duress that had been guiding and affecting my life for so long had not won. The divine does not allow our pain or dark nights to have the final say. Don't rush the process. It takes time returning to yourself. Various spiritual teachings call this experience the dark night of the soul. It is a spiritual phenomenon originally coined by Spanish mystic poet, priest, and saint José de la Cruz, widely known as John of the Cross, that happens to people to intentionally shake them awake, to activate their higher purpose, and to convert them and their lives into something new. As a spiritual practitioner and wellness educator, I've seen it many times. It's a temporary period of inner or spiritual crisis, although you don't realize it's temporary when you're in the midst of it, when the life you've come to know no longer makes sense, is no longer tolerable, often to the point of isolation and depression settling in. My life had a divine appointment to not die physically, but spiritually and conceptually. My suicide attempt called for the death of the lifestyle, mindset, and cycle that were no longer serving me. For other people, the dark night of the soul may look different. It can be a more suitable and less intense experience that includes some pain and frustration, but no life trauma or spiritual crisis. Both ways lead to awakening. We see this in the case of Siddhartha Gautama, who through his own dark night of the soul later would become known to the world as the Buddha. Siddhartha was a beloved prince who lived a privileged and luxurious life. There was no initial life trauma or crisis in his case, but he became profoundly dissatisfied with his life and experienced an inner knowing and a tugging of his heart and soul toward a higher direction and purpose. For Siddhartha, this took the form of forsaking his royal life of privilege, giving it all up to reach enlightenment and higher purpose. For me, this dark night reckoning was the beginning of something new. It led me to realizing that the slowly sprouting seeds planted deep within me all those years before, the ones that got me out of my unhealthy relationships and toxic life, were finally ready to break through and rise above the soil. Seeds germinate and grow only when the conditions are right, so having a new path that supported me in this way was essential. Reconfiguration. We are all capable of starting over, of vibrating higher daily, of change, of deciding what we give our energy and attention to and what we don't. You may have journeyed into a traumatic dark night of the soul, lamented the death of a loved one, gone through heartbreak, experienced a loss of health or security, or you may have noticed a propelling higher call and force guiding you away from the life you've known. In all cases, you are always capable of the game-changing journey from death to rebirth into higher awakening. Pain and suffering are most often the gateways and the initiation into our higher selves and higher purpose. These experiences usher the soul into transformation, into vibrating higher and experiencing empowerment. and then into the unfolding of a new way of living, doing, and being in the world. After my dark night of the soul, I started looking for solutions to overcome my circumstances instead of feeling defeated by them. The depression and shame that I quietly journeyed with throughout my childhood and teen years and into adulthood had consumed enough of my life. This dark night experience was a fork in the road, a turning point, an activation. I was led and inspired to begin living more mindfully and intentionally through my everyday choices, and it started with what I ate. Food became a gateway. After some time and consistency, the vibrational awareness around how I started eating soon grew and transferred to the types of energy I allowed into my environment, to how I managed my thoughts, to how I treated others and myself, to how I lived in general, and to the type of work I did in the world. One small decision and starting point led to a whole new way of being in the world, a better way for me. These various areas of my life had always been interconnected, but now I was living more and more aware of that interconnectedness, and I was more intentional in my day-to-day choices and decisions. From mindful eating came awareness of bigger things. Thanks to a free Wednesday night support group for survivors of various forms of abuse, I learned to release my ego and my old way of thinking and surrender to necessary change, a wonderful thing for my soul. I continued deciding day after day and choice by choice to take my power and life back. Along the way, I had mentors who each saw something more in me than what I, with my limited yet changing perspective at the time, saw in myself. I saw a victim and survivor. They saw someone overcoming adversity, a teacher and a hero. My first full-on mentor was a calm, wise, older man called simply Dr. B. He entered my life by divine appointment, and my life has never been the same since. We met one warm summer afternoon in 2007 during what first happened to be another random friendly meeting at a Whole Foods market in Los Angeles. Our paths first crossed in the crowded store when we bumped into each other in passing. He was very courteous. We both laughed, and then we went our separate ways. About 10 minutes later, I was standing perplexed in one of the supplement aisles. Mind you, I was still new to healthy living at the time, struggling to choose a product. The struggle was real, and I hadn't the slightest clue what to choose. And then, as if divinely timed to precision, this gray-haired man who had bumped into me 10 minutes earlier passed by, recognized the lostness in my posture, and intervened. This act of kindness turned into a 20-minute conversation of great value. I was reasoning deeply with the knowledge this nice stranger was sharing with me, so much so that by the end of our exchange, he declared to me, "You're one of us. You're here on a mission, and you're powerful. It's time to remember who you are." Whew. For more than a decade, I've passionately and diligently worked with this mentor and others on my spiritual journey and path to vibrational awareness. These important and positively impactful connections would eventually guide my being toward teaching others the path that has reconfigured me and my life vibrationally. It's time to rise into your empowerment and purpose, and though you may be scared and have repeatedly doubted yourself, surrender to the path. Realize that being trapped in fears is more exhausting and frustrating than moving forward into the unknown and your empowerment. Journey beyond those voices within that are discouraging you, the ones that say you can't rise above wherever you are or have been. Open up to a new and better expression of your life. Vibrate higher daily. Shaped throughout the reconfiguration process, I was able to grow, learn, and unfold into my more authentic self over time. I leaned my whole life in a more healing, holistic direction. Like sunflowers, which no matter where they are planted, turn toward the sun, I too began turning in the direction that nourished me. This path has since become a way, no matter where I may find myself planted, to turn toward the sun, the light. Over the next decade, my journey to deeper healing, transformation, and discovery beyond the life and pain I'd known would be through the path of what I call Vibrate Higher Daily. Throughout this book, I'll interchangeably refer to it as the path. Things, people, and energies that are once painful memories or blockages to my higher well-being and development were neutralized, including the limiting mindsets, tendencies and habits that I used to struggle with through my life. They no longer had power or authority over my life. Living from this reality has been liberating and life-changing. My intention and prayer for you is to rise above and beyond too, starting wherever you are, and also for you to step into your empowerment and higher purpose. Whatever your story is, whatever your pain or disconnect from life may be, it's not allowed to have the final say in your life. Your story doesn't have to end where you feel it may be trying to end. Find your way through and beyond. Allow your pain and frustration to awaken and rebirth you into a new creation. From this inner space, you can create change within, reach your higher potential, and then help to shape a better society and world. This is the life-shifting power of vibration, which is always within you. No matter where you are planted, may you always turn toward the sun. Reflect on this for a moment. Some of the most beautiful, empowering, and fulfilling days of your life are still out there, all heading your way. How divine. Peace and blessings to you all.